All right, back on the B-Cast B-side here on Friday afternoon, live from our studio in snowy Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Very snowy.
And
although people in the Midwest make fun of us for saying that 3 feet's a lot.
Yeah, it's but
it's a lot for here.
Yeah, I went to school in Chicago, and I know, and I've spent a lot of time in Minnesota too. But it's flat. It's big. When we have hills and lots of bridges and things like it's a whole different dealio. So the one of our viewers. Richard had sent a link the other day of saying that hey, you know, there's this professor who, back when he was younger, encountered Barack Obama when he was still in school at Occidental. And then Newsmax did an article about it based on the guy's blog posting. His name is John Drew, and he is now a specialist in finding grant money, right? But a well-educated guy who's been a teacher and according to this picture on his website, a very proficient rider of camels, apparently. But he has very interesting things to say about Barack Obama, and he's on the phone with us now. John, can you hear me?
Yeah, Scott, I can hear you just great.
Yeah, well, first, before we get into the whole Obama thing, what was with the camels here, by the way, just so we know?
I teach courses on grant writing at different places around mostly California. We were in Pittsburgh, I think, October 7th. We were out there to do a workshop, but I got hired to go to Egypt, Cairo, Egypt, to teach a workshop on grants, and so afterwards they talked me into getting on a camel, and I was scared to death. That thing was about 10 feet off the ground, and they were dragging us over little metal shards. So if I don't look happy on the camel, Scott, I was terrified.
Well, it looked like a great adventure. So now let's walk through this story. You put up a blog posting, and there have been some follow up on it, and there's even a YouTube video of you just talking about it. But talk about how you came to meet Barack Obama, and why you're kind of just talking about this now. What caused you to want to tell this story?
Well, I tried to get the story out during the 2008 election, and I sent emails to Fox News, and I was posting stuff on the New York Times, the Caucus blog site, but the story just didn't lift off, and so, my wife and I, we were kind of frustrated that we felt like we weren't getting a fair hearing for the story.
Right.
But the basic, and it's embarrassing, but I was a Marxist myself. Pretty much starting my junior year at college, I studied Marxist economics at the University of Sussex. I wrote my senior honors thesis at Occidental College on Marxist economics. And I was pretty much a Marxist myself up until about 1984. And then my own research took me off in a very different conservative direction when I was working on my doctorate.
What was I'm curious about that, because I was actually talking about this yesterday on the show, that I always felt kind of boring, that, kind of how I was sort of kind of conservative in college, and I'm still kind of that way, and I never had one of those sort of radical stories of realignment. What was the thing in 1984? Was there a trigger point that caused you to say, wait a minute, maybe I'm going at this all wrong?
What happened is I was researching the causes of the welfare state. Why is it that welfare programs arose in some states but not others, and at different countries in different times? And the Marxist argument is that welfare programs arise as a result of class struggle,
right.
Organized union people fighting for benefits and taking them from the rich. And my research showed that in reality, child welfare programs began when you made child labor illegal. If you made it impossible for kids to work, you took away one of the sources of security for a working family. And so I was able to show that pretty much welfare programs arose as an unintended consequence of the previous enforcement of child labor and compulsory schooling laws. So it was a big controversial thing to do, because I was the first political scientist to make the argument that child labor was a causal variable in causing welfare programs.
Well, that's very interesting. And you've been a teacher, a political scientist, a university professor. But winding back the clock to Occidental, you weren't directly a classmate with Barack Obama.
No,
but you had a memorable and notable and somewhat lengthy encounter.
Yeah, what happened is I was dating this girl, and she was taking Roger Boucher's political theory courses at Occidental College. And one of her classmates was the tall, young, handsome, charismatic Barack Obama. And what happened is I was already a graduate student at Cornell University, and I flew back to San Francisco. I visited her at her house out there in Palo Alto, and young Barack Obama showed up with his basically his closest friend, Hassan Chandu. And they both showed up, and we all went out to dinner and partied and drank and smoked cigarettes, and we did what young Marxists do. We basically argued politics.
Well, and I suppose lots of people would look back and say, well, how I was in college is not necessarily a predictor of how I am as an adult. And I guess it's interesting when you look at the people that accuse Barack Obama of at least having sort of socialist sympathies and lifelong associations with some pretty radical people.
Sure.
You'll be able to tell us a little bit about the conversations you had, but how do you separate out the guy that you saw and heard from then and what he was articulating to you now, and to where you see Obama now? Is it a sensible evolution?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I did not take my status as a Marxist revolutionary lightly in 1980, in the fall of 1980. To me, it was a serious business. It meant that I was an enemy, in a sense, of the U.S. government. It meant that I was an enemy of the wealthy people who were ruling the country. And it meant that I was willing to take whatever sacrifices, in a sense, were necessary to confront that power structure and to be part of a revolutionary movement which overthrew it. So for me, being a Marxist college student wasn't sort of a light-hearted romp in the park. It was a dead serious statement that was impacting my career, my relationships, and my studies. I felt like I remember at the time being shocked that the establishment let me go to graduate school. Like somehow they didn't realize what an enemy of our country I was.
Right.